last week, yesterday, this morning, something. I shared some of these sketches in this sketchbook I started, and they're painting in this sketchbook. The sketchbook is not designed for paint, but it's handled it surprisingly well. The they're This is mostly um, water-based house paint that I was using. Back in the day, I would hit up Home Depot for their Oops paint, and it was really cheap, just $5 at most for a gallon of something that was mixed wrong. And I would grab the brightest colors to use in my sign painting. Hi, Sissy. And so I had these bright greens and bright magenta and bright yellow. Um, who in the hell was ordering that for their paint, for their house paint? I have no idea. But apparently they changed their mind too, and and so it wound up on the shelf. Hi, Victor. And so I had all these bright colors, and I had them poured off into little bottles, and I would carry a bunch of bottles around in a case in the trunk of my car when I went to paint signs and murals and stuff like that. One day I hurt my back, and well, it was more than one day. It was an ongoing thing for a while, and I did uh, all these little creature faces in my sketchbook because I would just be up for maybe an hour at a time. Then I had to go lay down, because I was just recovering. And I've been posting some of those to one of my other groups, and somebody asked me how I did it, and that was kind of hard to explain. And so I was wondering if I still had it in me to do such a thing. And so I did another one this morning, and it's a little different. I don't have any house paint anymore. I've given all that stuff away or used it. Um, and so I just used artist acrylics. Um, and what the process was for this, and I'm going to post all this on my Facebook uh, maybe tomorrow. And so you're getting a little preview, but the process was I was laying on my back trying to sketch with the sketchbook held above my head like that, and it turned out that that was even too much for my back, to be holding something up hurt, and so and I just couldn't draw. I didn't have the coordination to draw like that, so I just wound up with these scribbles. But I was so bored, I just went ahead and scribbled, and then so I gave myself that sort of game, that they gave you when you were kids, where they put a scribble on a piece of paper and say, can you find something in the scribble, and you draw a fish or a God knows what. So I loved those, and John, hi, Sissy says I love that. Thank you. Um, so that's what I just gave myself that game to play. I just drew scribble after scribble, and I came back and looked for faces mostly in those scribbles. So I wound up with shapes of faces, big bulging eye, one squinting eye, and then snarls and things, huge teeth or huge ears or one eye in the middle of the forehead or something. They're just things that were just random. They just happened in the scribble, and I just kind of accentuated one part and decentuated. If there was something I just couldn't make anything out of, I just ignored it. And then later, when I felt better, I came back and inked it with brush tip markers and then painted it. Hi, Sharon. And so um, I just went back through the whole process and photographed myself working my way along. And so I'll share all that tomorrow. So you got a little sneak preview. And one of the reasons that it's hard for me to talk about what I do is that I'm not entirely clear what I do or why I'm doing it. And I had I don't know where I came across this a few years ago. I just dug this out of the stack. But a few years ago, I came across a mental exercise called mind coffee, and I'm gonna go look it up again. You can Google that sometime. It was just a self exploration kind of a thing, and it, they gave you some words and said, apply that word to what you're doing or something like that. And so it was sort of a rambling thought, and it actually helped me to kind of clarify that because I was really feeling hung up on the fact that I was doing work that doesn't work for an illustration, and it is not the kind of thing they sell in an art gallery, and it wasn't signs, and so I had no market, and so it was just like, I was trying to pull things too hard in one direction or another instead of just letting it go and saying maybe this is going nowhere, maybe this will just be stupid, but let's just draw. So I, was able to kind of mentally let loose and do uh, a number of the things. The whole octopus thing, I did a series of 100 octopus paintings, absolutely without purpose. I wound up selling them. So Sissy says, "Can I buy that? Are you selling it in 2 months or so? Are we talking about the color picture, the monster face thing? I guess certainly I'll sell that." But I I've been presenting those to some of these other groups, and a guy just keeps saying, "You need to make cards. You need to make cards." And I wasn't clear what kind of cards we're talking about, but I think he was thinking of the collectible cards like baseball cards, and then like back in the '60s and '70s, Rat Fink. Who's the guy? John, who's the guy? I'm trying to think of. Big Daddy Roth and other people like that. They made these little collectible cards that were little monsters driving hot rod cars and stuff like that. And so there were trading cards that were pictures of that. And then there were other people that thought that was cool and did their own version that were like that. Yeah, the orc looking guy with the butterfly in his nose. Yeah, okay. And you've got to go. All right, fine. But since you're gonna buy something, yeah, do whatever you like. Have a good day. So cool. So he was talking about that kind of thing. He was referring to those kind of trading cards, and so here, 10 years after the fact, those things may actually have a purpose. They've sat for in my filing cabinet for 10 years with absolutely no purpose, and I may actually find a way to market them now, or not them. Maybe I'll just do new ones, or I don't. But it, these mental exercises, a lot of people think they're really stupid, and a lot of them are. For every one that's useful, you'll find 100 more on the internet that's like, why would I do that? But I don't know. Maybe it just hits you at the right moment or whatever. But this thing was called Mind Coffee, and it was encouraging me to write down any random thing that was coming in my head. So I said, one of the things that it's hard to write about myself because it's not clear what it is I'm doing, but I feel a passionate need to do it. And yeah, and it helped me to just kind of clarify the idea that it was okay to do something without a particular purpose, because sometimes a purpose will just come along later, and so that's one example of that happening. And so I'm moving along. I'm gonna do something to this drawing here, and hopefully it won't be too unnatural. Um, I went back over that. The one I finally posted this morning is the last. I haven't touched it after that, but the girl we worked on the video yesterday, and I put the lion in and everything. I was this close to just tearing that up, just going, it's just nothing's gonna happen. And finally, I decided I like it. I like it. So that's cool. We're trying one new thing today, technologically. I've got my computer plugged in to a Cat 6 cable. Now, I don't know what that means other than it's superior to a Cat 5 cable. So, if you've only got a Cat 5 cable on your computer, go ahead and feel inferior and jealous. I've got a Cat 6 cable that's about 50 feet long, and it's running from my computer out the door and down the hall along the floor into the modem in the living room. And Stellar had plugged it in, and unspooled it down the hall and plugged me in, and that left like sections of the cable that were in big spirally globs. And Minnow the cat uh, was apparently abused by electrical cables when he was younger, and he's very suspicious and angry around little electrical cords, and sometimes he'll come up and whack 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 whack, and well, of course, when it's all coiled up like that, it's bouncy, so it fights back, and apparently he hit that thing and it bounced back at him and he flipped out, and literally I heard his body go whoosh, splat, because he's a big fat cat and he just went whack on the floor, and he flipped out. But yeah, so that's happening. So if we have a sudden disconnection, there is a cat involved. So far, um, the connection is really, really good. We did a short Zoom just to experiment with it, and the connection was stable and there was less lag. I can hear Stellar's voice in the next room, but while we're doing our meetings, I'm hearing the voice out of the computer is like 5 words behind what I'm hearing in the other room, and this time was only a word, maybe half a word. Um, Oh, Sharon says it was a little hard to get her right. I had to kick her leg out of bed. And so the same picture I had trouble with. That's gratifying to know actually that it was not that easy. Maybe there was something really unnatural about that pose. Sometimes for photography, a model will be doing something that you just wouldn't do, for a 20-minute like drawing pose. You'd just be dying, and it doesn't look all that hard, but it's hard. So Stellar says so far the picture's good, no freezing. It's good. And John gave me a link for Von Franco traditionals for the card stuff. I'm definitely going to look at that after the video. Thank you. Yeah, that's the kind of thing. And really, the only thing slowing me down at this point is thinking of what to say on the card. Like what kind of logo to put on it and names. Do I want to write a little story on the back about the character, or what do I want to do like that? But apart from that, I've got the art. It's right there. I'll re-photograph it, try to get a better shot. But should be good to go. Stiller said there is a delay on this video of about 17 seconds. That's a long time. Well, that's really weird. Okay. I don't know what that means. That's weird. That may be a Facebook thing. And I'm talking out my butt. I have no idea. I have no idea what it is. I've got some sketches and magazine clippings and stuff. I'm just perusing really quick, and I'll try to get right to it. Right to it. Uh, Sometimes I look at a picture like this. There's not a whole lot to it. I dropped her eyeball down. That's all. The only thing I've changed on this so far. Did her eye too high up. It's a mistake I make often, actually. And it's an okay picture, but there is nothing exciting about this at all. Victor just told me earlier that I do nice. It wasn't Victor. It was somebody else. I forget. Somebody told me earlier today that I do a nice job drawing feet, and I didn't do a nice job here. I barely even acknowledged that she has feet. But yeah, no, feet are hard. And I've usually started up here and given a lot of work to her face and her body and her arms and legs, and by the time I get down to the hands and the feet, they're like little mittens and socks because I don't have any time left. And then there really is a problem. I mean, I can sit down and draw somebody's feet and do a fine job of it. Um, they are hard. I'm not going to deny that, but you can do it. Um, but it just to draw a foot right, you could take as much time as the rest of the figure drawing. Sharon says a much stronger connection with the chord. That sounds like it should be true. All right, I'm going to stop talking and start drawing. Basically, this picture gives me zero sense of narrative. Okay, um, there's nothing about looking at it that says, "Oh, there's something really going on here. There's something important happening." It just it is girl sitting there is what it is, and so then I think to myself, I'm gonna go Frank Frazetta on this. Is what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna very self-consciously go Frank Frazetta. I know I talk about Frazetta all the time because he's cool. But yeah, sometimes I just think I'm just gonna go. I'm not gonna copy anything, but I'm gonna do what would Frank Frazetta have done with this drawing, and just kind of WWFF. Whatever. Um, I got lost. I got lost in my spelling. And I don't worry. I used to think I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't even look at a Frazetta drawing while I'm doing something else because I'll wind up copying and it won't be my own work and it turns out there's no such danger. You know, I'll start drawing this thing and then I'll just kind of go, yeah, but on his, there's no straps, and I won't allow that. I allow it for him because he's the demigod of fantasy art, but that's not okay for me. There's going to be a mechanism for for this thing to be on her body, and sometimes I also start thinking, well, that looks uncomfortable, and then I start redesigning it to be more comfortable. And I don't know, by the time drawing, I've done drawn something unique. Um, but for what it's worth, in case you're wondering, brass breast cups with little spirally things on it is not his invention. Okay, it was old. It was 100 years old before he was painting it for the magazines. And so there's nothing to be concerned about them. Um, and the same with these things in the hair. I was looking at some photography. It's 100 years old at least, from the Middle East. A little bit disturbing that some of it was almost certainly were pictures of slaves, but women wearing decorative things in their hair that kind of like this, and and a couple of them you could zoom in. There was like an earring, but it's like, how is that connected? That doesn't seem right. And there was a couple you could really zoom in, and as near as I can tell, there's this big gold ring that's just hanging from her hair, like she's just tied some of her hair around it, or there's a string or something going over top of her head, or something. So her ears weren't even pierced. So she had these huge earrings, but they were just hanging off of her head. So that's not something that ever occurred to me to draw things that way. But um, yeah, you could draw things that way. It would certainly explain why somebody could have this massive earring. I posted another picture that was more generally popular, um, this morning, and it was based on one of the things we'd done in the Zoom room. So I mentioned that, and mentioned that everybody is welcome to come join us for the Zoom thing. And I've actually had a number of responses to that, people wanting to know, um, uh, how to get in on the Zoom thing. So we may not be all alone this weekend. We might actually have some visitors. I don't know. Frank would have given her more back. Well, yeah, but she's sitting on it. How would you know? Back as in booty, booty back. Also got little sketches I did from archaeology things. So I'm just using whatever. But yes, Frank Rosetta likes drawing girls with bottoms. He drew exaggerated figures, and it was probably because he had ghosted the Little Abner comic strip, for 10 years prior to his big career as a book cover artist. He had done comics, comic books prior to that, things like Flash Gordon and things like that. Um, but then he did Little Abner, and Little Abner, the action is extremely exaggerated, and the physiques of these people very exaggerated. The men are all very muscular, and when they're walking, they're you know they're doing that, and they're almost laying down. The guy's like running towards you. He's almost horizontal, and and Sissy's back. Sharon says I may be late for Zoom. Got a little birthday thing at 3, but I'll try to get home around 5. Your birthday? You're gonna have a birthday this year? I'm not having a birthday this year. I've decided to save the energy. That way, I'll be a year younger next year. The one problem with doing one of these kind of costumes on a girl who's sitting down is whatever it is she's wearing on the bottom, you can't see it. Um, which is actually why I don't know if you've noticed, but sometimes um, sometimes her belts have big bangles and things hanging from the belt and lots of interesting stuff. And sometimes it's just a little string. And it usually has more to do with uh, the fact that this part of the body is all I can see right now. And so I have to put something interesting there because there's something interesting here, but I can't see it. So, you know, so it, the ones where they're more plain is because I probably drew some really cool piece of decorative Guga down here, and so the strap could afford to be plain. Got a little of both on this one, but mostly I'm just trying to draw something interesting somewhere. I think she really did flatten out the way I drew her, but I want to give her more back, as some would say. So yeah, the little Abner comic strips were very exaggerated, and then he went straight from that into doing Tarzan and Conan and John Carter of Mars and things like that. And it looks similar. It's very similar. Once you know it, you know to make the comparison. Sissy, once upon a time, there were these things called newspapers. They were made out of large sheets of paper, and the internet basically was printed on this paper. And somewhere in there, they would have comic strips, and Frank Rosetta drew some of those. That's what we're talking about. You are, of course, too young to remember that. Sissy's like 17 or something. Sissy says, "I'm how old? You're not that young. You're not that young that you know what newspapers are, huh? Okay. Yeah, I thought you were like 17. Am I right? I When the Star Wars uh, prequels, yeah, when the Star Wars prequels came out, Stellar was working at Albertsons. Technically, so was I, but I was on my own schedule, and so I went to the theater and bought tickets for myself and my group of friends, and held our spot in line. So I was the first. I was at the number one. Actually, I was at the number two spot in line, and the other person that was ahead of me was doing the same thing. So she was holding a pile of tickets for her group. So once they all finally showed up, uh, my group got bumped about 10 spaces back. But we sat and talked for hours because we got there way ahead of time, and it was good that we did. I mean, we would have been like, you know, three showings down. There were lines forming behind us, and there was lines forming for the next showing, and then the next showing, already, and just sitting outside. But anyways, I was talking to this girl, and she was sweet and charming little teenage girl. You know, I figured somewhere between 15 and 18, but I couldn't tell. 18 at the most. At the most. Anyway, um, this group came up, and this guy came up and talked to her for a while, and Sissy says I was 17 when I first came to the States 18 years ago. That doesn't make any sense. No, no, I don't believe you. Anyway, this guy came up and talked to her for a while and walked away, and I said, "Oh, your boyfriend?" And she laughed and she goes, "It's my son." And I said, "How old's your son?" And she said, 15. And she was kind of like looking at the ground when she said it, so I know it wasn't, yes, I really look young for a 35-year-old or whatever. It was, uh, she was like, "Yeah, he's 15." And I probably sat there looking like a fish because I was going, um, and anyways, she didn't answer my unspoken question. She just goes, I know. And she didn't answer. And I think she was probably one of those shocking stories in the magazine, 5-year-old girl gives birth to a baby or something. Um, which is why I wasn't gonna ask, because I seriously think that had to be the case. So I wasn't gonna ask her, but it was just like, oh wow. so so yeah, that was interesting. That was interesting. But anyways, that was not what we talked about all afternoon. We talked about Star Wars a lot, and also the X Files. Sissy, you said you were really into the X Files. We Stellar was particularly into the X Files, but I always like to watch it. And we went to a we went to an X Files. It was like a convention. It was only a 1 day thing. It was a miserable trip there and back, but the event was really fun, and they held it at at an abandoned warehouse in Vallejo, California, and it was a rainy, foggy day. And the X Files Expo, yeah, um, big, just basically one big building, one big room, um, and it was really, it was really packed. And yep, that's them. We met. Who did we meet? The guy that played Krychek, and the the three guys, the lone gunman guys. One of them's a stand-up comic. He did a routine. Um, Maybe it was just him. I don't remember. Um, Stiller says it was on the decommissioned base in an aircraft hangar. So yeah, but it was an old wooden building, big uh, old place, and it looked just like some place that they would have featured in the show. Um, where there'd been a UFO for years hidden in some side inside this warehouse or something. And yeah, it was great. It was super cool. Um, I met one of my best friends on an X Files fan forum. Yeah, we don't. I think Stellar must have been on a fan forum uh, at the time. I don't remember how we found out about the expo. Must have been something like that. But anyways, we went to the very first one, and apparently uh, there were some real glitches. I mean, some things that didn't happen that were supposed to happen, and some super inconveniences. But still, we had a good time, and apparently, if you were at the later ones, they were better organized and stuff. But oh gosh, the very first digital camera we'd ever seen in our lives was there, and there was a green screen set up and a big light, and you go stand in front of that, and they would take your picture. Oh, they had a car. They were promoting a car like any of the kids that were there that were all X Files fans. We'd spent our last penny to get to the expo. We're going to, we're going to buy a new car, but they they had to stand in front of this car and look up at the light and go, ah! And then they took a picture with the digital camera and green screened us onto a like an alien abduction thing. It was fun. I mean, they printed up the picture and gave it to us, and it was pretty cool. Um, yeah, an old school message board, and Sissy says we went to an X Files fan weekend once. We all got our own FBI badges and watched X Files for 2 days. That didn't happen to be at the Howard Johnson's in Tempe, because we went to something like that. Only for a few hours, but the kids that were there for forever. Um, we were we were twice the age of anybody else there at both events. It was a weird gathering because there were vendors selling crazy merchandise of any kind, and mostly X Files related, but some only sort of related. And there was one group that that were clearly taking uh, the entire question very, very seriously. I mean, almost religiously seriously. Like the alien invasion thing was totally real, and they couldn't understand why anybody was laughing or making jokes. Um, it was so thunderously loud that for them to give you your spiel, they had to be kind of shouting, and I was just assuming. I was just assuming while I was talking to them that this was just a club, that got together and was doing that, as their shtick. That it was just a funny thing that, oh, we'll get together and act like the idiots that think it's all real, or something. And so I was kind of like, that's great, and slowly it dawned on me that no, they really are serious. Sony Mavica, the camera. How do you remember stuff like this? You just have this written down, and Stella has a memory. She has a memory, like inside of her brain. Um, I don't have one of those. But yeah, it was super fun. We had to ride the bus to get there, and that was super not fun. Super not fun. It was an overnight trip there and an overnight trip back, and all day in between, and we slept not a wink the whole time, and we were basically on our when we weren't on the bus and like this, between a bunch of people, we were standing and carrying our stuff. Yeah, it was kind of, I don't know. I guess I was expecting something more like a convention. I'd have some place to station myself and sit down more often. I didn't. I didn't. It was just stay on your feet and slowly trudge through the crowd to the next exhibit, and listen to another spiel and stuff. But it was still a really cool time. And we saw presentations by some of the actors and I don't know special effects people and stuff like that. It was really kind of cool. I have no idea why I'm talking about that. Stellar says, "Don't be too impressed. I'll lift it up." Nah, I don't believe you. She's just covering for herself. She's got this brain. I don't have one of those. Anyway, that wasn't too exciting. I hope the X Files talk was more exciting. So I'll see you tomorrow. Okay. Thanks for watching, and be there on Saturday, 5 o'clock for Zoom. Might meet a whole bunch of new people. All right. Take care.